Welcome to His Excellency President Paul Biya Philosophy and Leadership in Cameroon. This video will explain to you the philosophy and the leadership contributions of His Excellency President Paul Biya to the Cameroonian society. President Paul Biya is a Cameroonian politician who is the second president of Cameroon since 1982. Son of Etienne Vodo Assam and Anastasia Eyanga, he started his education in Lycée Général de Clercq, Yaoundé, and in France at Lycée Louis Le Grand, and in Paris at the Lycée Louis Le Grand, as I said, Paris, going on to Institut des Hautes Études des Outre-mer, where he graduated in 1961. Great politician of the 21st century who served as the second president of Cameroon since November 1982, second longest ruling president of Africa, and the longest serving consecutively serving current non-royal and non-national leader in the world, and the oldest head of state of the world. Yes, let's talk about the philosophy of Paul Biya. Rigor and moralization emerge as the axis of New Deal principles and constitutes the vision of society of President Paul Biya since he became president of Cameroon in 1982. In his political campaign, Paul Biya focused his attention on the democratization of political landscape, social and economic liberation, rigor and moralization, and the reinforcement of international cooperation ties. The New Deal head of state rests his power on the most organized political system in the past, the former one-party system, Cameroon National Union CNU. He was re-elected in April 1988 and in October 1992. The 1992 election was the first ever presidential election that was based on universal direct suffrage, with many candidates in the history of Cameroon. In November 1997 and October 2004, he was re-elected president for 7-year mandate. He sped up political reforms in bid to resolute lead Cameroon in the plan of modernism, democratization, and participation of large number in the decision-making process. In March 1985, he revitalized the CNU during the memorable Congress that held in Bamenda, reorganized its structures, and renamed the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, that's the CPDM. He engaged his countrymen to develop interest in politics and to freely air out their views. CPDM refers to an assembly of all citizens of goodwill without any exemptions who hold the unity and stability of our country in high esteem. Democratizing the political landscape of our society, which no doubt held its merit at one point of our national history that appears to be tenant to the consideration of the people's sovereign power so that they can better participate in the management of state affairs. So let's try to see about the objectives that the CPDM was bent or gradually attaining. Applying the rules of pluralism, grant freedom of speech to the masses so they could air their views. Furthering the democratization process. Today, Cameroon opted for pluralist democracy, the experience of Paul Biya as head of state has enabled him to consolidate his democratic achievements, pluralist election, and modern constitution, and to carry out reforms of the state. In addition, peace and unity were maintained, or better still, reinforced. So we'll now go about to talk about Paul Biya's philosophy and leadership for sustainable development. As said, Paul Biya is a native of Cameroon South, rose to power under the President Amadou Ahidjo in the 1960s as Secretary of State, General of the Presidency from 1968 to 1973, and then as Prime Minister, succeeded Ahidjo President upon the latest surprise resignation in 1982, fifth Prime Minister from 1975 to 1982. As from 2025, he is the second longest ruling president in Africa. That's after Teodoro Obiango, Nigeria Basango in Equatorial Guinea. He introduced politics reforms in the context of one-party system in the 1980s, and later accepting the introduction of multi-partisan politics in the 1990s under serious pressure. Paul Biya's Greater Ambition policy was meant to help take the country out of underdevelopment and to modernity and make it an emerging country before 2035. His major accomplishments at policy level: the fresh impetus, pursuing our policy of openness to other political parties and civil societies by giving dialogue, consultation, and participation in seeking solutions to the nation's major challenges. Pursuing the decentralization process by transferring powers from the state to regional, divisional, local authorities. Promoting good governance by stepping up the fight against corruption, discrimination, and regardless of social status. Modernizing our public service and making it more efficient. Enhancing the rule of law in order to ensure the security of persons and property. Improve business climate and increase citizens' access to information. On the economic front, consolidating on public finance and stability, doing everything possible to accelerate growth in the transport section, construction of roads infrastructure, construction of railway transport infrastructure, resumption of activities of National Air Transport Company, leading contributions to our exports, carrying out all the strategic actions adopted to make Cameroon an emerging country by 2035. At the social level, the French impetus, promoting social housing by building 10,000 local housing units, increasing the population access to quality health and medication, ensuring education for all and youth training, empowering women to attain equal rights for men and women, increasing youth employment opportunities. At the environmental level, the French impetus, ensuring the sustainable management of our forest heritage. And lastly, fresh impetus, living in peace within our borders and our neighbors, promoting diplomacy based on the principles, participation in activities of United Nations Organization and the African Union and those of the Commonwealth and those of La Francophonie, and of course those of sub-regional organizations such as the CEMAC. Continuing to promote Cameroon's image, Paul Biya philosophy and contributions, that is to school and the educational system. Paul Biya of Cameroon rigor and moralization is dated term, and that refers to being moral and ethical in a thorough, exhaustive, philosophical, consistent manner. Paul Biya's New Deal political philosophy for the nation building focus on democratization of the political landscape, social and economic liberalization, rigor and moralization. The core values of Paul Biya philosophy promotes ethics, integrity, responsibility, professionalism, transparency, intellectual honesty, openness, and humility. So the contribution at school level now, Paul Biya's New Deal political philosophy has helped in creating an environment in which each student is expected to learn at a very high level. Each student is supported so he or she can learn at high levels, and each student demonstrates learning at a high level.